Good afternoon, everyone, to another exciting episode of PWHR Voices. Today, we have with us Ms. Irani, CHRO Signify. Irani, we welcome you on board. It's a pleasure for us to be speaking with you. We'll be discussing a very interesting topic today, how HR managers, how can they feel empowered to drive business changes? So a small introduction of what we'll be discussing today and what will it all consist of. In today's rapidly changing business environment, human resource managers, they play a very critical role in driving organizational success. As companies face new challenges and opportunities, HR managers are increasingly expected to lead business changes that can impact the entire organization. However, for HR managers specifically, to effectively drive business changes, they must feel empowered and equipped with necessary tools. Therefore, in today's discussion with Ms. Irani, we will explore how HR managers can feel empowered to drive business changes by understanding the business, developing a strategic plan, communicating effectively, building strong relationships, and using data analytics to continuously improving upon their aspects. Irani, I throw my question to you at first, and a very basic one for people to understand what exactly is the crux of today's topic. How, in your view, can HR managers stay informed about business trends and changes to better understand their organization's needs with regards to specific situations?
Okay, thank you, Sugandh. Pleasure to be speaking to you on this very relevant topic. And, one of the basic principles that I have learned very early on in life about, a career in HR is to say that HR actually is the fulcrum on which organizations thrive, because HR is managing the most pivotal part of any organization, which is the people. Having said that, I think it is becoming more and more pertinent now to understand the role of HR more holistically and the role of HR managers. HR has seen its evolution over the years from mostly knowing as payroll processors to data and file organizers, to providing basic statutory requirements for employees, to now say, how are we enabling business in the truest sense? And to answer your question, I think what becomes very pertinent for the HR fraternity and all HR managers is to have both an outside in and an inside out view. And what I mean by that is outside in is about understanding the competition landscape for the industry that you're operating in, understand the principles and the market forces which are leading to the competitive landscape that you are part of as an organization, understanding the dependencies that your organization has. Say, for example, if you are a product company, is there a dependency that you have on crude oil, or do you have a dependency on material? To a services company, where do you have a huge impact on Forex that is kind of impacting your business? That's the outside in perspective. And the second one, very important, is inside out. And what I mean by inside out is HR managers absolutely should know not just the vision and purpose of the organization, which I think HR plays a lot of interest in, but also the longer term and the short term strategy. What is the long term sustainable strategy that the organization has, and what is the near term outlook that the organization has, and how will people and HR enable those? That could be about operating model, that could be about organization design, that could be about structures, that could be about people processes, or just the right training and enablement of people. So understanding all the market forces and understanding the strategy and the dependent needs of the organization to make the strategy happen, because strategy will only happen when people understand the strategy and deliver to the strategy, is extremely important.
Well, very beautifully you've curated, and step by step you've actually mentioned various viewpoints. So in your view, what are some strategies, now that we're talking about how to strategize and what all strategies to put in place? So what are some strategies that an HR manager can use to gain support from executive leadership to implement business changes? Because while I feel that, it is the role of an HR to actually strategize, but they get a green signal from the executive leadership only once they present their plans. So according to you, what all should be, the strategies in place for HR managers?
That's, strategy is an all-encompassing word, so it's very difficult to define in pockets. But if I look at the role that an HR manager, or more prominently an HR business partner, has in an organization, is once the strategy is understood, there are various facets. One of the facets is forecasting, or doing a plan for the year to say, if the business has to grow by X, what will be our basic requirements in terms of people? How much do we have to kind of, what is the footprint that we need for people? Two, we have to look at what is the kind of productivity that we are wanting to drive out of the people, and the basics of analytics in terms of productivity for a newcomer versus productivity of a tenured person, having that scenario in plan. Third is having the scenario and plan of the reality of how attrition moves in an organization. So this I'm talking about just having people in place to make the strategy happen. So this is about hiring, doing the proper workforce planning, and with the workforce planning, how are you looking at the trends, both internal and external, to plan for those trends in advance. That's about hiring and attrition. The other big part is reskilling. So I think when the HR managers are going to key stakeholders, the plan is not just about, I will get these people in, I will induct them, and, so many people will have tried, so this is my backup. But also think about what is your talent pool sitting in the organization today? How fungible are they to take critical roles that are required? And what is the kind of training and intervention that we can provide to enable them to take those roles? There could be a role which is very critical to the strategy, which is best played by a person who understands the organization dynamics, who has been in the system, but probably is not equipped completely to be able to do the role and needs some amount of skilling. And that should be the second outlook that the HR manager or the HR business partner goes with, saying, this is our talent pool, this is the critical pool, this is the kind of mobility that we can work on, this is the training intervention that will be required, and this is how we will look at it. Third is what I call scenario planning, is to say what are the critical roles, or what are the critical things that we need to achieve. And for those critical things to happen, what are the dependencies that we have? It could be people, it could be digital, it could be process, So HR
while I see that in a way that if you have strategies in place, how we need to go about it. But if I may ask, when an HR manager actually devises all these strategies and puts it in front of the executive leadership, from an employee's perspective, what is the extent to which you feel that the strategies are followed? Because there are many times we put policies in place, we put strategies in place, but not much of it are put to use when it comes to execution. So do you think that the strategies that are usually devised are always put into execution, or are followed the way that you're explaining it?
So of course there is a gap between what you plan for and what you execute, because the reality of the here and now starts to play a part. But if you put a strategy, you have thought through all the all the barriers and all the enablers that will. So you should predict for what is the minimum possible threshold that I have to achieve. So whenever you put a strategy, you think this is the ideal scenario. You do, this is the best case scenario, this is the ideal scenario, and this is the worst case scenario. But the endeavor for the organization has to be that you will be at the ideal scenario at least. So I think making a strategy out of utopia to say, I have done this. And when it comes to employees, if, the way I think you're asking me the question is to say, if we have strategized that a person should be doing this, this, and this to make this happen, is the person actually doing this, this, and this? A basic human psyche at all times that a person asks is, what is in it for me? Why am I doing this? How is it adding value to me as an individual? So I think the big picture, where organization over team, team over I, is good. And it should be the big picture that should lead the organizational culture, but we should be able to add value to that one individual who we're betting on. So if we're
Okay.
saying that tomorrow Sugandh is supposed to do this, this, and this, she needs to learn this, this, and this because we need to deliver this, this, and so one should actually see that by doing or by leading or by doing these things, how is it adding value to her as an individual? And when you start creating value for an individual, you start creating value for the team and then the organization. So it's a fair balance of saying that while we never lose sight of the big picture, how are we dealing with an individual and adding value to that individual to be able to achieve that strategy? If I don't realize what's in it for me, I may just lose interest. So individual learning, individual understanding of the role, the responsibilities,
also the strategies that you're putting in place, the employee needs to be in accordance with, why are you putting those strategies? If tomorrow I'm asked to do certain things or certain KRAs that are added to my already doing list, then I should be explained of why I'm being wanting to do, why do I have to perform these extra duties, or why do I have to instill these extra skills in me. Of course it is giving the company a long-term achievement, but it should also showcase an employee growth, ma'am, I feel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And most times, the example that you're stating is very relevant, is most times the operating model change or the organizational design change happens in a closed room. And then it is announced, this is the change that we will live by. And most times, employees are taken in by surprise. But if you're not being able to, satisfy their queries as to why this organizational change happened, why did it happen, it will never make sense for them. And if it doesn't make sense for them, for a manager or for a manager's manager, if they don't see sense in it, all you will see is either dissatisfaction, morale going down, or attrition. So you have to carry individuals together to make the team happen. And not just HR, I think the role of leaders, the role of the CEO of the organization, and transparency in communication is extremely important. I think HR plays a big role in enabling a culture where communication is as transparent and as authentic that as it could be, because then your employee starts trusting you for what you're talking about. And when there is a trust between an organization or a manager and the employee, or an organization and the employee, magic starts to happen.
No, very rightly you said that an HR needs to carry the people along. So in your view, how do HR managers leverage this expertise in people management and development to drive business change?
I think one of the things that is extremely important for HR managers, and I'm part of the HR fraternity, is to have a thorough understanding of business.
Exactly.
Most times I think HR managers know the business at the periphery and then try to devise solutions for the business. It will not work. You have to know what the business is, what is the consumer wanting out of the business, because HR is devising strategy for people who are closest to customer. So for the employee to be able to deliver to the customer, we have to create a frictionless journey for the employee. What is HR doing? HR has to understand that my employee who's in touch with the end customer goes through these situations in his or her daily life at work. And how do we enable that individual to be able to provide the best customer service possible? And that knowledge is only possible when HR starts to understand business. HR starts to get into the analytics.
They actually need to align with the vision of the company also, I feel. It is very important. Until and unless you don't understand the ethos of the company, you cannot actually put strategies also in place until the ethos is not in place.
Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, you will probably devise something which is very bookish, which is very theoretical. And the moment, like you said, the moment you start to put in practice, you will realize, oops, this doesn't work. It's not working because business is getting hampered. I can't change the span of this organization like I thought I could, because you didn't understand the challenges that geography had, say, for example, or that business had in terms of customers it was serving. We sometimes come with a template. Okay, this is the template, north, south, east, west. In India, say, for example, we will follow this. Most times we don't understand the complexity of the country, and the complexity that a business has, or the model that we want to work on. It's not always a geographic model, right? It could be a product-led model. It could be So understanding the business, understanding what are the strengths of the organization culturally, having the big picture of where the organization is wanting to go. And lastly, I think being real about what you can achieve. We can make the best strategies, but we should know what are our limitations as an organization. What is it that we can actually do and what is it that we can't do? Otherwise,
Right.
but coming back for HR, one is understanding of business, two is understanding of stakeholders. I think extremely important to build that rapport of stakeholders so that HR is not seen like a function which is kind of teacher in a school. Say for example, most times people say don't go to HR. You go to HR and everyone you will be reprimanded. So HR has to build that relationship of trust with employees, that
Exactly.
we are not a function which is a teacher. We are a function that enables you, and you can be candid and be trusting with us.
And
We
you
are
are
not
actually
at all.
somebody who's like people's goer, if you
Absolutely,
are
absolutely.
facing any issues within your day-to-day lifestyles of work as well, I believe
Yeah.
HR should be the person who should be like your go-to person, because that person will only enable further strategies for you on how you
Absolutely.
can work and how you cannot, and how can you fulfill your KRAs. So I feel, yeah, I mean, in HR
Yeah,
needs to build that trust.
and the third thing that HR needs to really do, apart from these two, is having authentic, difficult conversations. Just because you are in HR doesn't mean that you will only give the good feedback. When someone is trusting you to say that you will give them the right feedback, and it is upon HR to be able to have those conversations, those trusting conversations with authenticity, and being able to manage a difficult conversation without letting the morale of the person go down. So logical conversations, stakeholder management, business understanding, big picture thinking, while you have an outside in perspective, very important for HR. Very important.
And in your view, what are some of the common challenges that the HR managers they face while driving business changes, and how can they overcome them? Because in the journey of devising strategies and taking people all along, there must be certain challenges that an HR must also be facing. And of course,
Of
they're not
course.
addressing it to you on day-to-day basis, but they're finding solutions to it on their own. Because in an
Yeah.
employee's view, an HR is a solution giver. So they cannot be
Absolutely.
seeing a situation where an HR is also coming up with a problem, but it's very natural for them
Yeah.
also to face challenges. So in your view, what are
Absolutely.
some of the challenges that they face, and how should one overcome them?
I'll talk about, we're talking in the month of March, so it's very relevant that organizations world over suddenly start talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion because
Exactly.
it's Women's Day. Yeah. And most times in organizations, you will see that role of DEI is left to HR. I think that's the biggest fallacy, because organizational change on basic strategies like diversity and inclusion actually it comes top down. The sponsorship has to be from business, sponsorship has to be from the CEO to make such things happen. So HR gets frustrated. So we're doing so much. Say a training program HR launches,
Right.
or a webinar HR launches, and there are 20 people instead of 200. Most times, the frustration is because in organizations, I have heard people say that put it into their goal sheet. Otherwise, they'll not do it. Over the years, I have started to believe that what gets measured gets done. If you don't measure something, it won't get done. So anything that HR does can't be fuzzy. It has to have a return of investment, as you call it. So if you're taking a training program, what is the output you're achieving out of it? And link it to business. The moment business or employees see value of how it's adding to business, you will start seeing sponsorship. But wherever there is a fluff and it's not defined as to this training program will lead to what, I don't know. It is a good training program. The moment HR says it's a good training program, it will not work. But frustrations are high. I can't always blame HR. We organize an event and there is no one coming in. It's a mental health event. People will come and talk about their mental health issues. But when HR is trying to do an event, you will not see people come in. So frustrations are there because I think some organizations follow a goal sheet culture where people will only do what's in their goal sheet and they will
Of
not do
course.
anything. If it's not their KPI, they will not do it. So I think sometimes it's also smart for HR to link certain outcomes that they want to have in the organizational KPIs that the leaders have. When leaders start to understand that this is important and this metrics is getting measured, it just trickles down and things start to happen. So I have realized this, to say if you put metrics, you start, having leaderboards, you start showing data, you start showing impact of that data on bottom line or top line, bottom line mostly for HR. You will start to see, because people can't then start challenging facts, and then people start to align and start to do it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Irani. It was a pleasure speaking with you. Some amazing anecdotes and analysis you've shared. I'm sure people who are hearing it might have certain questions to you as well, because they might also be facing issues on day-to-day basis. So for all those who still have questions for Ms. Irani, you can actually, we'll be putting this video on LinkedIn as well. So you can actually tag Ms. Irani and ask her all the questions that you may seek. Thank you so much, Ms. Irani. Pleasure for us to be speaking with you. And you took out time from your schedule to come and discuss on such an important topic today. So we are highly obliged in that aspect as well. We shall, continue to have more such conversations and inputs from your end. But for now, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rohan. The pleasure is mine. And I think I would just like by ending to say that, HR is pivotal. I think HR is the CEO's right hand now. And the role gets richer and richer. It's just upon us how we start to think of ourselves as HR people. I'm really proud to be
and there is a new spectrum to how we look at HRs today.
Yeah,
and very rightly, you also pointed out in the beginning, we just knew HRs from a payroll perspective in the beginning, but today we actually understand what all roles they have to play, because post-COVID, it is something that has been handed extra on their platter, and HRs feel they've been successful enough in showcasing their talent as well. So kudos to your efforts as a CHRO. Thank you so much for joining us, Irani. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Sugandh. Same here. Thank you.
Thank you.